anxiety is a feeling that we all experience at some point. All children experience anxiety. But what happens is anxiety becomes a concern if it's affecting the child's ability to go to school because they're having a stomach ache or a headache every single morning as they're getting ready to go to school, or they are avoiding participating in class projects because they're so anxious. They're not able to participate on the playground and play with their peers. They're reluctant or fearful of social situations. So if it's impacting their ability to get through their school day, that's when we need to say, stop, something's wrong. Let's look at the Moro Reflex.
Exactly.
Let's look at what's happening at school. Maybe there's a bullying situation or something else going on.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey there, welcome back to All Things Sensory by Harkla, your podcast DJs, your sensory experts, your primitive reflex, passionate therapists. None of that even made sense, but we are so happy that you're here today. I'm the crazy one. I'm Rachel.
I'm Jessica.
She's the normal one. And
normal. People don't like that word anymore.
Normal. She's the integrated one.
There you go.
And today we are taking on a topic that is a little more serious than I'm being right now, but it is all about it's all about anxiety and the Moro Reflex, specifically in the classroom.
Yes, there is a connection between anxiety and a retained Moro Reflex. So if you are a teacher, if you are a therapist, if you are a parent, and you have a student who is struggling with anxiety, we want to start looking at the Moro Reflex as a potential factor. I don't want to say cause.
No.
Because I feel like there's so many different ways that could go. But there's definitely a connection.
A connection. I think it's something to rule out.
Yeah. And address. Yeah, exactly.
So the first thing is anxiety in children. There are a plethora of different reasons why we see anxiety in children. But with that being said, we're going to focus on the Moro Reflex. And, we think about anxiety, we think about kids who are hesitant to engage. They maybe don't even want to go to school. They are uncomfortable in social settings. They have, fear around certain areas relating to school, maybe taking tests or participating in like a school performance or something like that. They're just uncomfortable in a setting where ideally they should be able to participate and play and have fun and engage, but their brain is saying, you're not safe. You need to run from the lion. Let's get you safe. And that's how they're feeling at school, is just uncomfortable and scared and hesitant.
Yeah, and I think it's important to keep in mind that anxiety is, a feeling that we all experience at some point. All children experience anxiety. I like your example of a school performance. This is something Logan and I have talked about, where he gets the butterflies, he gets nervous. There's a little bit of anxiety buildup when you're going to perform or present something to the class. And that's normal. That's expected.
we're not allowed to use the word normal.
I know. It's expected to feel anxious in those situations, but you work through it and you do it anyways and you're okay. But what happens is anxiety becomes a concern if it's interfering with daily life. If it's daily affecting the child's ability to go to school because they're having a stomach ache or a headache every single morning as they're getting ready to go to school, or they are avoiding participating in class projects because they're so anxious.
They're running away from school, or they're not even transitioning from the car to the school.
Yep. They're not able to participate on the playground and play with their peers. They're reluctant or fearful of social situations. So if it's impacting their ability to get through their school day, that's when we need to say, stop, something's wrong. Let's look at the Moro Reflex.
Exactly.
Let's look at what's happening at school. Maybe there's a bullying situation or something else going on. But specifically, we want to talk about the Moro Reflex.
All that to say, we're focusing on the Moro Reflex because if you're new here, if you've never heard about primitive reflexes, your mind is about to be blown, because these primitive reflexes we are all born with. They develop in utero. The Moro Reflex specifically helps us take that first breath, transitioning into life, which is just so cool. It's so fascinating to me. You can literally see it. Anyways, the Moro Reflex, it helps us alert our caregiver if we are in danger. It helps us cling to our caregiver, and it helps basically keep us safe and alive, and it needs to go away. It needs to mature into that higher level adult startle reflex where you can startle, you can feel scared for a minute, and then you can carry on and come back to baseline.
Yeah, so in infancy, if the Moro Reflex is activated by sudden movement or a sound, what you'll see is you'll see a physical response where the baby their arms and legs will extend, and then they'll curl up and flex, and then the baby will likely cry. And then there's also a chemical reaction where stress chemicals are released throughout the body to activate that cry response, signaling to the caregiver, hey, something has happened, something startled me, I need help. So then what happens is if it's not integrated between 4 to 6 months,
give or take,
of infancy, if it's not integrated, then in childhood specifically, we see this in adults too, but in childhood, what we see is a chronic state of fight or flight. Those stress chemicals are going through the body all the time instead of being in homeostasis, and then something happens, we release those stress chemicals, and then we go back to baseline. It's like all the time. Those stress chemicals are flowing through this child's body all the time. They're in a state of fight or flight. They're emotional. They have outbursts. They avoid things. They don't have any ability to self-regulate. They have high anxiety.
And going back to infancy, we want to make sure that we are recognizing that in order for the reflex to integrate, the reflex has to be triggered, right? So the babies have to startle. They have to go through that startling pattern time and time again in order for their brain to know, I'm startled, I'm safe, my caregiver is here, is comforting me, and now I can regulate and co-regulate and be safe and move on. So
yeah,
that's why, there's a lot about startling. There's a lot about swaddling out there, and how swaddling prevents the Moro Reflex. And I mean, think about it, the baby has to startle in order for the reflex to be integrated. So if they're in containers all day, if they are in a swaddle all day, if they are startling and not being comforted and crying for a caregiver who's not attending to them, then that reflex is likely not going to integrate. And that's when we're going to have these challenges show up of that constant state of fight or flight. Like, am I safe? Am I not safe? Am I scared? Am I not scared? Is there a lion chasing me? What do I need to do in order to be able to just survive, right? It's a survival instinct.
Yeah. And the big piece there is that connection with the caregiver. And so if we look at a child who maybe had a traumatic past who was born to a chaotic home. Oftentimes these children didn't have the opportunity to integrate that Moro reflex because they didn't have a caregiver who could provide them with safety and connection. And so then the Moro sticks around for safety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So what do we see in the classroom when a child likely has a retained Moro reflex and they are also struggling with anxiety?
First one would be an overreaction to different things in the classroom, like the fire alarm drill or sudden change in
Fire alarm drill?
fire alarm. What is it?
Fire drill.
Fire drill. Okay. I just think of the alarm, so I had to say the alarm.
Do we need to tell my story of my brother?
You do.
This isn't the best story. It's honestly heartbreaking, but it's a really good example of what we don't want to see, what is not functional. He was always so scared of the fire alarms going off. And if he knew that we were going to have one in elementary school, he told me later on as an adult that he would cover his ears all day and like draw with his arms and like, you know, try and like do his work like this, covering his ears because he was so afraid of the loud noise. He was so sensitive to the loud noises.
And he didn't know when it was coming, so he had to plug his ears all day just in case. So there's an overreaction to that loud
There's a bit of
noise.
Overreaction. And he's still sensitive to this day to noise.
Yeah. You know, an overreaction to the lights getting turned on, or an overreaction to, you know, somebody in class making a loud noise, something like that.
Yep. And then with change happening, or if an unexpected change happens at school, we have a big reaction or an overreaction to that as well. So they really crave that consistency, that knowing, you know, what's happening, what's coming, and they just struggle with any change of routine.
I was just thinking this could be a student who gets really high anxiety during tests or before tests, to the point where maybe they're sweating, they're, you know, shaking. Maybe they can't even participate in the test taking because they get so anxious.
Yeah. Definitely. And they just feel like they are in that constant fight or flight. They are struggling with social skills. They're struggling with building relationships with their peers. They're withdrawn. They are quiet. They are just uncomfortable in their own skin, and they just could cry with, you know, any bit of feedback that you give them, positive or negative. Any little riff sends them into just a complete meltdown. Maybe they're in the nurse's office all the time too with stomach aches, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Those physical reactions are big. Headaches, stomach aches, feeling in pain.
Just like talking about this just makes me want to cry, thinking about all the kids who are struggling.
I know.
And no one knows why. Yeah. And they're just like so miserable and so, I'm just going to cry.
I know. So what do you do? So what do you do? What
do we do?
The first one is to create like a sensory space or a calm down corner in the classroom, if possible, a space where the student can go if they need a break. This could be a space where if they're overstimulated by too much noise in the classroom, they can go grab some noise canceling headphones, sit in the quiet corner for a couple of minutes to just decompress. You're going to teach your students how to use this space so that it's used appropriately, so that it's used in a way that's beneficial. It's not an escape, but it's a tool, a place where a student can go, especially a student who's struggling with anxiety. They can use it for a couple of minutes to decompress and then come back.
Yes. And then you also want to make sure you're including visuals for the daily routine, the transitions, and then practice that flexible thinking as well of like, you know, if this activity isn't available, then we're going to do this. Or if this teacher is unavailable, we're going to have a substitute. So just start building in the what ifs and that flexible thinking of planning and preparing them for the schedule might be different today. So what are we going to do if that makes us feel uncomfortable? We're going to take a deep breath. We're going to, you know, jump on the crash pad. We're going to go swing. We're going to use a strategy in order to remind us that it's okay to feel a little bit uncomfortable with change, but that doesn't mean the whole day is ruined because of that, and working through that.
Yeah, and preparing your students for those changes in routine. If you are a teacher and you are going to be out of the classroom the next day, so the routine will be different, make sure you prepare the students ahead of time.
If possible.
And yeah, if possible, as much as possible. Or if you have a student who struggles with tolerating the fire drills, not fire alarm drills, the fire drills, then make sure that you are able to provide them with notice ahead of time and tools to help with regulation during those challenging situations.
Yeah, like if you know that there's going to be a fire alarm.
A fire drill.
You're rubbing off on me.
It's a fire drill, Rach.
If you know there's going to be a fire drill that day, letting them know ahead of time, giving them headphones so that way they can feel regulated and, be prepared for it. That can be really helpful.
Yep. Use movement breaks and heavy work activities during the day. So anything that is proprioceptive based, heavy work, deep pressure, those activities are going to be regulating to the nervous system. And a child with a retained Moro Reflex who struggles with anxiety in the classroom, they are going to benefit so much from these activities and these strategies. So things like crawling, jumping, maybe they have a classroom job like carrying a bucket of books to the library, or maybe their classroom job is wiping down all of the desks at the end of the day, and it's something that's heavy work that's going to be regulating to their nervous system.
Yep. And then teaching all students about breathing strategies and taking deep breaths, and explaining to them that when they do take a deep breath, it teaches their body and it tells their brain, you're safe. There's no lion chasing after you. You are okay. So let's practice that on a daily basis, and let's all take deep breaths together. Let's all practice that. Every hour we stop and we take a deep breath and we regulate our nervous system, and we tell our brain, we're good. We're safe. We're here together. We are thriving.
Exactly. Now, at home, or if you are a therapist working with clients who have high anxiety, who have retained Moro Reflexes, the first thing you want to do is work on integrating the Moro Reflex using exercises like the starfish, the peanut rocking, popcorn, or rhythmic movement training. You can look into our Primitive Reflex digital course where you can learn about those exercises and how they help integrate the Moro Reflex. You can look, is it Sonia Story who does RMT? Look into Sonia's Story. She has some great trainings as well. But really, the overall goal here is to integrate the Moro Reflex so that the body can come out of that fight or flight response and be more regulated.
I was going to say, I'm reading a great book right now called Movements That Heal. That would be another good one to read as well. So doing the activities that will help, give that brain a second chance to integrate those movements that maybe they missed in infancy, and then using proprioceptive strategies. I don't know why I'm like using proprioceptive strategies.
Hitting things
to regulate. When in doubt, prop it out. Start using proprioceptive strategies as a regulation tool, because that proprioceptive input counteracts the overstimulation from all the other senses. So making sure that we are using those heavy work activities, the heavy items, the pushing, the pulling, the compression, the stretching of the joints, muscles, and tendons.
Yep. And then creating a personalized sensory diet routine that uses those proprioceptive activities, those regulation tools and strategies throughout the day proactively. So instead of waiting for your child to have a meltdown, to just totally fall apart, use these sensory tools and activities several times throughout the day as a way to help them stay regulated. And then if they do have a meltdown, the meltdown will likely be less. They'll be able to recover quicker. And you also have tools to help during the meltdown.
Yeah. And then finally, just making sure that we are creating and fostering a safe, comfortable environment. We are co-regulating with our clients and with our kiddos, and we're just making them feel secure, whether you see them for an hour a week, whether you see them every day at school, whether it's your own child. Just think about connection, positive experiences, and safety.
And then the last thing here is to look at the environment. So often our environment can cause our body to think that we're in danger. So things like poor sleep, poor nutrition, toxins, things like that can send our body into a stressful state. And oftentimes, if we have a child or an adult whose Moro Reflex was integrated, but then that person goes through a stressful situation, or they are in a stressful environment, or their body is loaded up with heavy metals or toxins from what they're ingesting or putting on their body or where they're living, then that Moro Reflex can actually come back. Again, it's for safety and protection. So we want to look at the environment as well.
Definitely. So, moral of the story today, we are going to focus on empathy. We didn't talk about empathy at all.
We did not.
But empathy is really important, especially in the school setting. Instead of, thinking, oh, just get over it. There's no reason that you need to be anxious right now. You're fine. You're okay. We're not gonna frame it that way. We're going to, hone in and say, I see that you are uncomfortable. You are scared. It's okay. I'm here with you. We're going to get through this together. Just being empathetic for our kiddos who are struggling with anxiety, and then coming at it from a different lens of, let's address the primitive reflexes. Let's take it back to the basics. Let's start incorporating these movements into the classroom for every student, because every student likely can benefit, especially in this day and age. So I think just starting small, incorporating some little changes, and just, if you're a therapist, educating your admin, educating your clients, the families about the Moro Reflex and its impact on anxiety.
Yeah. If this episode was helpful, we'd love to hear from you. You can tag us on social media, All Things Sensory Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a comment on this podcast, share this episode with a friend.
Yep. We hope it was helpful. If you have questions, let us know, but we'll plan on seeing you next week for another episode.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes, or message us on our Instagram account, which is at harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.